right at the top of the hour. So welcome everyone. For those of you who have not been with us before, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who have been with us once or several times, thank you so much for coming back. As you know, this is an informal discussion about various topics. Most of the time they have been about race. This time it's going to be focused on LGBTQIA+. And we have an amazing guest with us. But before I tell you about Lisa, we also have Patrice, who is my tech guru, and Jen, who is my office everything. She keeps me straight and narrow. So I'm thrilled to have both of them. Jen will be reading the Q&A box. So please open that box and send us your questions as soon as they come to you. And I've got several questions for Lisa, but I certainly want to ask her the questions you most want to learn about. So let me tell you a little about our guests today. As a certified diversity, equity, and inclusion professional speaker, that is, and facilitator, our guest today specializes in counteracting unconscious bias and LGBTQIA plus and inclusion in business. So she works in business and she works in the education system. Her impact is amplified through strengthening each person's allyship. And lots of my clients have been asking me how to be an ally, especially in this regard. With a demonstrated history of working in secondary education as well as with businesses and a passion toward community and social services, she's an expert in counseling, crisis intervention, leadership, and program development. Lisa has earned certifications in DEI from Cornell University, which is one of the best known places for certifications, by the way, as well as the Inclusion Institute certification for diversity practitioners. Her book, Be an Inclusion Ally, it's okay to hold it up, Lisa, great, is an Amazon bestseller. She is a certified virtual presenter, and you'll find her TED Talk on YouTube. Oh, and there's one more area of expertise. Lisa is a cheese curd connoisseur.
True
I just
story.
learned what that is a few minutes ago. So from Middleton, Wisconsin, welcome, Lisa.
Oh, Lenora, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in, for anyone who might be watching this later. And I would just like to say greetings for those of you, if we don't have closed captioning right here. Hi, my name is Lisa. So welcome, welcome, everyone. And you don't have to adjust your volume. This is a born and bred Wisconsin accent.
Good enough. Well, we've got lots of questions, Lisa, and I'm just so excited to have you with us because in my work in the DE&I space, people often ask me questions about LGBTQIA plus and all of those letters and what they mean and that type of thing. So my first question to you is, what is the question you most frequently are asked about this community?
The number one question that I get asked is, when someone comes out to me, what do I say? And my answer to that is, the best thing that you can say, my friends, is thank you. Thank you for trusting me. You don't have to go into anything beyond that, because that it has been a journey for this person, but that is the number one question that I get asked is, what do I say? Yeah. And there are a lot of other questions, but again, if you just say thank you, because that has taken a lot for that person to speak their truth.
Yes, and it certainly shows that they trust you enough that they
implicitly
would come out to you. Absolutely. So they shouldn't do things like, often when a person has one Black friend, they shouldn't go into, oh, and I have another gay friend, and stuff. They should not do those.
Right, they shouldn't, but they do.
No, they do.
Yeah, and I hear, oh, my family member is, and I'm like, that is fantastic. fantastic.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. So let's take a minute to clarify terms. There are so many. So just for now, like the big terms that people don't know about, because I do want to go for a couple of them, I want to get more specific, but take it away, help us understand all those letters.
Absolutely. So there are lots of them, and you might hear, different variations. The Human Rights Campaign officially adopted LGBTQ plus. There's not a test. Okay, just so you know that. So L would be for, and sometimes you'll hear them in different orders, but that is the order that is adopted and most frequently used by my people. So lesbian, usually girl and girl. Gay was LG. Yep, gay. For the most part, men like men. B is bisexual, and that can be, if you don't know what bisexual is, I'm happy to talk about that later. The T is transgender, and it's transgender, not transgendered. So we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit. Q can be queer and questioning. And then the plus incorporates the I and the A that Lenora, you were talking about earlier. So the I is intersex, and that is a baby who is born and has both genitalia, and it's hard to determine how to socialize the baby. And there are more people born intersex than those who have cleft palates.
Wow.
So that's why that was enumerated out. And then the plus is everyone else under our wonderful rainbow umbrella. So LGBTQ plus, or if you just say friend, that works too.
That works as well. Well, and one of the things that I get asked is, why do the letters keep adding on? And my answer, so share with me how I can refine this or tell me if it's not correct, is in an effort to be as inclusive as possible, the letters have grown, because it used to be just gay, like that was supposed to cover everyone, and it doesn't. And similarly, with the Latin community, you used to say Latino to cover everyone, but in Spanish language, there's gender difference in the words. So Latino would be male. So instead of saying Latino and Latina, now we say Latinx. And, people are getting more accustomed to saying that because it's more inclusive. So it would be the same type of thinking, correct?
You should do this for a living, because that is exactly what that is. And the other neat thing is that, so I'm a Gen Xer, so the generation following after me, they are embracing the Q so much more. It used to be a derogatory term, but through the TV show Queer Eye, it's taking on its own meaning. So but an excellent analogy.
So talk to us a little bit more about bisexual, because I won't tell you what people tell me, but I can tell that people are confused about that particular one as well.
So bisexual can be different things. And I do my best, as I am a cisgender person. So what that means is I was born female, I was socialized female, and I still identify as female. Okay. And so as a cisgender person, I'm not bisexual. And so what I did is I tried to do research on that. And so in my book, I talk about, here are some resources to work with friends who are bisexual. So a bisexual person can be in love, can be married to someone who is also bisexual, can be married to someone who is straight, can be married. It can be polyamorous. We could go down a whole lot of rabbit holes. And so the one thing that I'll tell you is that it is not a phase for that person. And so I think that is the biggest thing that I have been told by my friends who identify as bisexual. You know what? This is who we are. And, it's interesting how some people in our community will be like, just make a choice.
Yes, that's what
And I'm like, let them live their truth. So that would be my answer, unless you ask someone else who actually is bisexual.
Got it. So this goes a little bit deeper relative to terms. Help us understand the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity.
What a great question. So there was an article, and I can tell you, I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a little phrase, and then is it okay if I share a picture
Yes, please do.
with you? Okay. So sexual orientation, that is who I go to bed with. Gender identity is who I go to bed as. Super short, super sweet. And I'm hoping now that you are seeing a lovely picture of our gender unicorn. Yay. So a visual representation for you out there. And what I love about this is that it was actually created by transgender students to help us, I'll call myself old, understand what's going on and what this all encapsulates. Okay. So in this little unicorn, as you look at the top, we've got the gender identity, right? So that's my brain. That is, when I think about this, I usually think of, this is the who, okay? So gender identity. Gender expression is all, I was a camp director, so I'm going to, use lots of arm language here. Gender expression is how I express myself. It's what I wear, it's, accessories, etc. So that's an expression. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be gay. You can have gender expression however you want to, okay? And the younger generation, they're expressing themselves a lot. So that is the expression, all right? Then if you keep looking at that in the middle, they've got the sex assigned at birth. So that is the what? That is the here we go, biological, here we are. Now, again, I mentioned earlier about intersex. That's where it's like, okay, we're not sure what it is. And there are terms that are used now that'll say the child is assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. And so that is the terminology. And like you said, Lenora, it's sometimes difficult for me to keep up with all of the things. So if you have questions, just call Lisa K, your everyday gay. I will help you. You don't have to do the research. Just let me help you, my friend. So I'll do that. Okay. So then the intersex, you have to figure out how you're going to socialize. All right. And then that's where the binary comes in. And so even though I might have been born female, I played with tractors. I played with GI Joes. My expression was more on the binary of the male side. All right. Then in the heart, this is our orientation. This is who we love. This is who we are attracted to. So again, identity is more of the thinking part of things, and orientation is more of the heart. How's that in a nutshell?
Well, and the graphic helps clarify it so much. So what I'm hearing you say, one of the things that I'm hearing you say that I think people get confused about is you could identify. So I'll use myself as an example.
Sure.
I'm cisgender. I express myself as a female. I was identified as female. And what's the other part? So I was identified at birth as a female. I express myself as a female. And in my case, I love my husband who's a male. However, a person could have those identities, and it could be that I would prefer to wear men's clothes or to, do other things that would be an expression of a male, even though I'm a female. So that was the new learning for me, that if you see a male who's got fingernail polish on, don't assume that he is gay.
Exactly.
That might be the truth. Okay.
It might not be. Yep. And my analogy that I use for so many people is Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye, right? He's got facial hair and he likes wearing dresses and fancy shoes. And so when we talk about how do we react to someone when we see, if we were to see him, in a store, he has the male pronouns, etc. Actually, I think he just came out as they, but you are correct on that. And again, my friends, it's a journey. And it's okay to not know things, and it's okay to make a mistake. And if you make a mistake, just say, I'm sorry. How can I do better?
That's one of the things that people are so challenged with. You could go ahead and take the slide down, I think, for now. But people and I was just having a conversation with a client just before this call. And what he was saying is, I really want to be an inclusive leader, but I'm just so afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And, and not specifically on this topic, but more broadly. And in today's environment, 2021, with everything going on in the world and in our country, that silence is compliance. And so if you don't say something, people assume you're comfortable with the status quo. And change doesn't happen until you get uncomfortable with the status quo. So we've got to lean into that discomfort, be willing to make some mistakes. You're just not, and there's no pill you can take or no book you can read to know all the quote unquote politically correct terms, because guess what? As soon as you learn them, they change. So just, go on the journey, as you're saying. I so appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So I live in North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and this was quite a huge issue a few years ago. Talk to us about transgender and the bathroom.
Well, if you grew up in a family and someone was born the opposite sex from you, my guess is that you have all used a gender neutral bathroom. My example, I had an older brother and I had a father. Guess what? We all use the same bathroom. Okay. So that would be the first thing that I would say. The other thing that I would say is that that's okay. Again, I am not going to judge you unless you're being mean, malicious, and hurtful. Okay. But if you just don't understand and you're like taken aback and a little gasp, think about it like a spider. Okay. That spider is more afraid of you than you are of the spider, unless you're my wife. But that is a person who is their true self and they want to use the bathroom, right? They're going to have way more apprehensions than you who may be in the heteronormative majority of things. And one of the things that I think about as being a former middle school counselor is we've had so many students who they wouldn't drink at all during the day, so that they didn't have to use the bathroom, so that they didn't have to deal with this. And then we go into not only the mental health aspect of this, but then the physical health, right? Of what can happen if you don't do those things. And so I will say, if it is a stall, you don't have to worry about anything. Hopefully everybody washes their hands. I am more worried about that, Lenora, than I am anything else, and think about when we can go back to sporting events or music concerts, right? Think about that long line. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the long line for we females was a lot shorter?
Exactly. And what folks say to me is, and I remember, and this was when the whole issue was happening with North Carolina and the law they had passed. I had a conversation with someone and they were saying, well, I just don't want my daughter going into the bathroom and there's this person calling themselves transgender that might accost her. And clearly that person was making the presumption that a transgender person is a pedophile. Two totally different things. Talk to me.
Well, I don't know if you can see how verklempt I'm getting. So that is one of the things that it's like, let's look at the statistics, my friends. We are so not that. And it's interesting because if people will say something about, well, I'm afraid of getting hit on or whatever it might be, please. And I don't mean to be petty when I say this, but please don't flatter yourself. I am not attracted to every female that I see because I am a lesbian. And so when it comes to, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach our children to be loving and respectful of someone who is being their true self? When we were little, I had an imaginary friend. Somebody wants to be a mermaid, let them be a mermaid. And the statistics do not speak to that. I won't even say, well, if you look it up, it is the complete opposite of that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So you mentioned this before, you alluded to this. It's the pronouns. So talk to me about I have she, her, hers on this one. Actually, I didn't change it to just say
You're
she and
fine.
her, but you could also have they. And how I'd like you to talk to us is, first of all, why were they necessary? And then um, whether or not you should put that in your name, on virtual calls. How do you handle it if you're writing something? Let's say there are many business executives that tune into this Zoom. So if they are writing something to their general employee population and they want to be sensitive, how do you deal with that they piece?
That is wonderful. And that is the second most asked question that I get. And Jen, if there is anything that comes into the Q&A regarding this, I would love to take it timely and help with my friends, because in the business world, in the world of education, the pronouns piece is probably going to be at the forefront that you will see the most. And then the next one will be titles. So coming down the pike, you will see people using MX rather than MS or MR. Okay, so the Ms. Mr. is now becoming MX because they don't want to be put into a binary. We can do that another talk, but let's go back to the pronouns. So the reason that I have added my pronouns to my Zoom window is to show my friends who are transgender or questioning that I, as a cisgender person of privilege, hear you, see you, acknowledge you, and I will speak up for you. So that's why I, Lisa Kenneke, did that. And this has been, now granted, March 11th was when our world changed, right? And Zoom came the norm, or videos became the norm. And so it was just another way to, again, reach out and to be an ally from that vantage point. So I also had a question from someone that said, well, if I put my pronouns in my Zoom window, will people assume that I'm gay? To which it wasn't okay for me at that time, because I was presenting to say, well, what's wrong with that? I didn't say that, but I said, no, they won't. And so just like Lenora, I see you have your rainbows on your bangle right there. I know that you're an ally because you're showing me that. I know that you're an ally to my community, even though I am cisgender, with your pronouns. And so we started out using she, her, hers, he, him, his, right? And now, because we've been doing this for so long, my friends, I just go to she, her. And you mentioned the word they. They is going to be something that you will hear more and more, especially from my friends who are younger than me. And it was actually officially adopted by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary in 2019 as the most frequently looked up word, and then included as a singular term to help identify those who are gender non-binary. For those of you who have your doctorates in grammar and English and academia, my apologies to you. Please understand that we are saving lives by using they as a pronoun.
Yeah.
And
So
if I can quickly to the
please.
business friends out there, another question I get asked is, Lisa, should we mandate this? I, Lisa Kenneke, say no, you shouldn't mandate it. If that is your culture, if the head, the CEO does that, that's a wonderful example of the culture that you're creating at your business. However, if someone is not comfortable with that, be it religion, be it that they're still questioning, I don't want to mandate that. I have it in my email signature, and right after she, her, I have it hyperlinked and it says, what's this? Then anyone at any time can click on that and get more information on pronouns and how do I use them. So that will be, my friends, I promise you, something that you will be seeing more and more of, whether it is your own family member, someone in your community, or at your business.
One of the things that I'm much more mindful of now is when I'm using PowerPoints, if there is a reason I need to use a pronoun, I mix it up. So if I start with the person's name, and you might assume based on their name that it's she, that a female, depending on whatever else I'm writing. Now this goes in my general writing, blogs and articles and that kind of thing. But then also on PowerPoints is I'll say they, and it's quite intentional that it'll catch people for a moment. But the whole idea is as they start seeing that kind of thing more often, then it won't seem so unusual. At least that's my hope. I think it's a little harder for people to work it into their vocabulary when they're referring to someone because they're so accustomed to keeping it singular. So it takes a little work. But to your point, using it saves lives. And this is just a word. I mean, it takes a little effort, but it's just a word. It doesn't cost anything for
Absolutely.
the person using.
Yeah. And I'm teaching that to my graduate students. I'm teaching that to math teachers. Change your word problems so that they're not just Anglo names either. Let's learn some different things there. And I see in the chat, yes, I will send out what my hyperlink is on that. And then the other thing, my friends, is when you are talking to people, don't start with ladies and gentlemen and don't start with boys and girls. So if you can just say, greetings, friends. You know, I did my sign language. Hi, you know, hello, colleagues. Hello, scholars. Hello, Ubuntu Global.
Works for me.
There you go.
Great point. Great point. A client sent me a question after a presentation of mine saying that an email was sent out by one of the leaders and it said gents, even though the people receiving it were male and female. And I like your approach even better. Let's broaden it. Let's not put a particular gender connected to it at all. Now, I live in the South, and so when I'm speaking to people in the South, you know, I can say hi, y'all, or all y'all. That works too.
Yes, that's
So
great. But in Wisconsin, then they're like, what part of the state are you from? And then
right.
next year, my goal will be to eradicate, hey guys,
Yes.
You guys, but that'll be next year.
Well, I've been working on that for years, and there's a lot of pushback on that as well. And just like, gee, they know it's everybody. Well, I'm not a guy. And to my speaker friends, I say, but you're being paid to speak. So, you know, your clients think that you know this. You know, it might not be fair to you. You can't know everything, but that's an easy thing to fix. Just think of some other ways to say that. So I know Jen has some questions, so I'm going to turn the mic over to her. Ask a question, please.
I definitely do. And a couple of questions are nice follow-ups to what you were just discussing. The first thing is, Lisa, can you kind of explain what you mean by non-binary?
Yes, thank you for asking that, friend whomever asked that, okay? So in the way that we have been brought up in our world, you are man, you are woman, all right, from the dawn of times. However, that's not all that there is, okay? So the binary is, so boys, a gender reveal party, don't even get me started on that one. Let's do boy things, a blue, trucks, etc. Right? So that's a binary. That's how we are socialized. Okay. Girl, same idea. Think about this from, there is a famous restaurant that has something that you can drive through. And if you were to show up at said restaurant and ask for a small meal for a child that might make you happy, what is one of the things that they will ask? Would you like a toy for a boy or a girl? Now, this is 2 years down the road. So I, Lisa Kennecke, when I am queen, we will have gender neutral toys. What about Legos? What about Play-Doh? Everybody likes that. So again, the binary is how we are. We've all been socialized to do that, right? Don't throw like a girl, or, you know, football coaches, hey, you're a bunch of ladies, you know, sissies. And it's like, that was the first person I always went to whenever I was a school counselor, was the football coach, so that they knew that I was there, because they had the power in the community. And I was just there, you know, kind of like a mosquito, you know.
Just there being annoying, right? Enough to get their attention.
Yes. And so Jen, if that didn't answer the question, please give them my email. I'm happy to talk more with whomever that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Of course. And here's another great question. What question do you wish that people asked you more often about yourself? And
oh, thank you. The one thing that I would love for people to ask is, how did you get so funny? I mean, that is, if I could have that question, I could answer it like that. And it's so, in all seriousness, when I was going through, my sister told me I was gay when I was 27. So there's a
She
whole
told
other
you.
story.
She
Told me.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say.
Yeah. Because it wasn't an option where I grew up. You were either Lutheran or Catholic. I was forbidden to date a Catholic boy, but they never said anything about a Catholic girl. Hey-oh. So moving forward, I want people to know me as a person. And when I was a camp counselor and a director, know me as that. I want you to know Lisa Kennecke, the school counselor, Lisa Kennecke, the NSA member, Lisa Kennecke, the speaker, who, by the way, is gay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am the only person that you know that's gay, I am funny. I go to the grocery store, I pay taxes, and I pick up dog poop just like all of you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and I don't mean to be snarky when I answer that question, but just like everyone else, you know, and don't ask me, this would be an example. Rather than assuming that I am married to a man, okay, you could say something like, tell me about your family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can choose whether I want to come out that I have a wife, or I could tell you about my birth family, which is a whole nother episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, it's just thinking of, because that's one of the things in the workplace when people were working together in a building in person on Monday morning. So, you know, what'd you do this weekend? Or tell me about your kid. You know, they can make it general so that whoever they're speaking to would be able to answer it and not feel like they have to cover and pretend that they're something that they're not. So I appreciate that. Jen, do you have any more questions at the moment?
I do have one more.
Okay.
How does intersectionality play a role in understanding LGBTQIA plus issues?
You cut out there a little bit at the end, but I think how I would answer, go ahead.
Did you hear my full question?
So here's what I'm guessing is, how does intersectionality
Fit into this whole
play within all of these letters? Okay.
Yes.
Just like intersectionality would fit in with anyone who isn't gay, that would be my answer. So from the vantage point of, if you are a business owner, you know that you have the big 7 from the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission that you need to think about, okay? And so if I am, I identify as gay, even though I am a female, okay? It takes a lot of courage for me to come out. I have to determine where I'm going to live, even with my privilege. And so imagine putting on, if English was not my first language, if I were in a minority religion, if I wore a hijab, if I were in a wheelchair. And so from the vantage point of the intersectionality, there's not a statistic out there that says those who are neurodivergent are more likely to be gay than those who are neurotypical.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say is let's work with the person first, and then however they identify later.
Yes. And for the viewers that are not DEI practitioners and may not be hearing the terminology a lot, no worries. So intersectionality is that none of us is one thing. So I'll use myself as an example. So I'm a female, I'm African American, I'm tall, I'm from New Jersey, and I do this work. Well, all of those components make up who I am. And all of us as human beings have all of those components. So one of the things that comes up as it relates to what we're talking about right now is that sometimes people think, well, if you're a female and you're married, you would, if you're not marrying a man, which would, you know, be the dominant culture, if you're marrying another female, automatically the two of you are lesbians, but that's not necessarily the case. It depends on the intersectionality of the individuals involved.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for bringing up that example, because sometimes with pronouns too, what I've heard is like, well, that's just too hard to remember. And then my example would go back to, okay, so if you have a family member who identifies and was socialized as female is getting married, do you assume that they're going to take the male's last name? Well, of course I do. why is it then hard for you to understand that someone doesn't want to be put into a box of a binary? Let them be they. And so that would be another example I have for that.
So I bet this is another question that you get. I would hear it in my workshops when we're discussing this type of issue is, well, so particularly when it's two women who are married to each other, well, which one of you wears the pants? And
I knew that was coming as soon as you
Yeah.
set that up. And we hadn't even practiced that one yet. Okay. Yeah. You know, who wears the pants? Who takes out the garbage? Well, let me tell you, my friends, I take out the garbage. I kill the spiders. I do the cooking. I do the cleaning. I would marry me.
Exactly. Well, and sometimes my response to that type of question, because I will have already shared that, you know, that I'm straight and my husband is straight, but my husband does the cooking in the house. I'm happy to clean the kitchen as long as he keeps cooking. I take out the garbage. It's whoever is better at whatever thing needs to be done, or who's ever closest to it when it needs to be done. So it's, you know, not a matter of which gender is supposed to do which thing. And neither one of us can fix things in the house, but I'm in charge of finding the person that can fix things. So it, you know, it all works out. So we just have to kind of, as we have those biased thoughts in our head, to just catch it for a moment so we can move into our cognitive thinking instead of coming from an emotional place all the time.
And it's how we're socialized growing up. Just real quickly on that too, right? And so if I have a male child and I don't let that male child play with dolls, how am I socializing, you know, in our culture for that to be a caring father? And just think about those things. You know, expose your children, because they're not born to hate. Expose them to anyone, everything, different food, different smells, etc.
So talk to us about Pride Month. Why that month? We have a month to celebrate lots of different demographics. Why that particular thing?
This was my first blog that started my book, was to explain why we have Pride Month. So June 28th, 1969, Greenwich Village, New York, Stonewall Inn. At that time, it was okay for the police to come and raid the gay bars. Okay, let's just call it that. And so this particular night, Marsha P. Johnson, who was a self-identified African-American drag queen, her words, and Sylvia Romero, a Latina at that time, drag queen, said, "We have had it. We are done with this." They fought back, got arrested. A whole bunch of other people got arrested. And then Brenda Howard, who was a mom, so this is where PFLAG comes in, the Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, said, "We are going to have a parade. We're going to have a celebration, and it's going to be in June to celebrate the gay rights movement." And so that's why across the country, we have Pride Month as a solidarity for our people to say, you know what, thank you to those of us who have gone before. And here you go, people who are coming behind us. We have our pride, we have our flag, which Harvey Milk had something to do with as well. And so for the most part across the country, that's why we have Pride Month.
Great, thank you. And by the way, I'm just happened to open the chat on my viewer here. So thanks everybody for making comments and supporting what you're hearing. I see Jolene and Julia and Vicky and Valda and Harry, and there's just so many of you. I so appreciate it, and appreciate the resources, the links that you're putting in the chats too. So you know, please continue to do that, and continue to send in your questions using the Q&A box so that Jen can catch them, since the chat moves by quite quickly. So every now and then during a workshop, when this topic has come up, the whole topic of LGBTQ, someone will say, usually at a break, they'll come up to me and say, you know, I'm really okay with gay people as long as they don't flaunt it. What would you say when people say that to you?
Actually, if someone said that to me, I would say, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate the fact that you have courage to say that. And depending upon the time, situation, place, etc., I might say, what does that mean to you? And so if I were to have a big rainbow flag, would that be flaunting it? Well, I don't know. And so then what I would do politely, eloquently, using my master's degree is I might say, how interesting. So when we think about PDA, is it usually heterosexuals or homosexuals? Oh, right. That's what we see on TV all the time. Uh-huh. Right. Because when I grew up, I didn't have any role models.
Mm-hmm.
And, just recently you're seeing TV commercials with multi-ethnic couples in them right now. And, yay for the companies who do have same-sex couples in there. And Lenora, got asked this question by my sister. And I said, flaunt it. I am so far in the closet, you had to tell me I was gay. How in the world am I flaunting it? And now, because of where I'm at, I do want to flaunt it. I want to be a role model so that kids stay alive. Because according to the Trevor Project, which is the nation's leading LGBT suicide prevention hotline, just one adult can reduce suicide rates by 40%.
Wow.
And so if a young gay kid sees my wife and I holding hands and knows that that's okay, and if that's what you, my friend, thinks flaunting, I don't want to see you making out with your friend, just like you don't want to see me making out with my friend.
Yeah. Great. And sometimes, depending on the circumstance, when I ask the same question, help me understand what you mean by flaunting, then I would also ask them, so do you have pictures of your family, your spouse, if I already know they're married? Do you have pictures of them on your desk? And do you talk about them frequently? And usually the answer is yes. And I said, well, help me understand why that might be different for someone who just has a different sexual orientation or gender identity than you, because they need that connection to see that the privilege of being in a dominant culture in this regard is you're flaunting all the time. You're just not thinking about it. And
so much so that I wasn't out to my students, okay, for the first 5 years being a school counselor, and I never had a picture of me and my wife.
Yeah. And just think about how much energy it takes to keep thinking about what words you use and what you talk about, especially in, a casual kind of conversation at work. So speaking of work, want to move a little more toward work. So my first question is how, I'm going to ask this one first. So in business, there's a dollar and cents reason why organizations should be more mindful of the gay market. Tell me why.
For those of you who are sitting down, if you want to write down this number, this will blow your minds. Okay, Jen Marshall, are you ready? Here comes the number. $3.7 trillion, T with a T, trillion with a T, in purchasing power. Angela and I don't have kids. We're really good with our nieces and nephews. So that is one thing that you can take a look at. Not everyone is, fortunate like we are, but we do have a lot of purchasing power out there. And all you have to do, my friends in business, is if you have a little rainbow somewhere, we will sniff that out. We are at our respective credit unions, because there was a rainbow from the LGBT chamber on the door at one credit union. The other credit union was a picture of two women at a pride parade. Anyone else looking at that would say, oh, isn't that pretty? Two girls, they must be sisters. And we knew that they weren't sisters. And so to the business world, please know that we look for our allies. Lenora, I know that you've always been an ally, and that's where we'll spend our money. Our insurance companies, where we buy our vehicles, etc., on who is welcoming to us and who isn't, right? So, we don't go to a certain restaurant because they pulled all their ads when Ellen came out way back in the day.
Yeah. People vote with their feet and they vote with their dollars. And I remember several years ago when Disney decided to be more supportive and the pushback that they got, but they recognized the number of people who happen to be LGBTQ who love Disney. Disneyland, Disney World, all of that. And so they decided to be much more inclusive and more inviting in that regard. So organizations have to consider where are their values, their internal corporate values, and whether or not this fits. I mean, you have to make your own decisions, but recognize there are consequences to whichever direction your decisions go.
Good
So my
point.
next question to you is the one that I get asked frequently from a diversity and inclusion perspective in general, but again, specifically as it relates to this community. So how can people be better allies? And one person did ask me, well, if I think someone is gay, should I tell them, as a straight person, should I tell them that I'm an ally?
I think that would depend upon the situation. Usually, ally is a term that is given to you rather than self-described.
Yes.
However, I would say that I am an ally to anyone who doesn't have a voice, just because I know that I have privilege. So that one can go either way. But going back to, the businesses and the best practices, think about your registration forms. Think about what is the first point of entry that someone will have with you. And so for myself, if I know that your policies don't have sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or nonconformity not enumerated out, that's how I chose to go to one school district over a different school district that offered me the same job on the same day. So I do look at those policies. And, do you have pronouns where people, when they're registering their names, does it say, just male and female? Does it say other? Does it say custom? What does that look like? So I can do you want me to keep going on those? Okay, great. And then, what about your benefits? Do you have, domestic partner benefits? Well, right now it's legal to get married everywhere. So hopefully you have partner benefits, spousal benefits. Is it just called maternity leave or paternity leave? How about parental leave? Boy, I'm on a roll here. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so when you have social engagements, do you say, yeah, bring your spouse? Well, what if I'm not married? What if I'm widowed? And so those are different things when you think about how do I be inclusive to everyone, because now we have to be inclusive of dietary needs. You probably have gluten-free products. You probably have these kind of things. So you can kind of weave that in. That's our intersectionality lesson for today with the LGBT as well, is to think about that.
And so one of the things that you brought up when we were talking earlier was around customer service. What are some things that companies need to think about in that regard?
On the phone, someone calls in and they have a low range voice. Are your people answering the phone automatically trained? And I'm not shaming you if this is your case, so no need. I'm not trying to out anyone here. But do they automatically say, hello, sir? Because again, that's how I was raised to respect my elders. And so that's a sign of respect. What if it's not a male? Right? So now that's the first point of entry to your business, that this person's like, here we go again. Okay, so that would be one thing. For myself, I have short hair. And so when I walk into Target, from the back, I get called Guy more times than I can tell you. And my teachable moment happened with a youngster who, again, I don't say a girl or a boy, I don't know, it's a youngster with a parental figure. And the youngster said, hey, sir. And I turned and I looked at the youngster and I said, no, I'm a girl with short hair. And so that would be when people come into your business, how do you react to them? And whether it's LGBT, again, I talked about Jonathan Van Ness, but it could be someone who, fill in the blank for marginalization on that. But again, it's the low voice being called sir. We could at Starbucks, let's just use, or a famous coffee store, right? You could say,
Too late.
All right, I'll help the next customer, or friend in red shirt. So I use that a lot because I know that I get called sir all the time. But then if I turn around, if you can't see me on camera, trust me, there's nothing sir about the front when I turn around.
Yeah, when I was exercising outside more often, I'd have on a baseball cap and long sleeves to cover my bangles. Part of that is about safety. I actually want people to think that I'm a guy while I'm walking really fast. But if there was an occasion where I would need to go into a store and I was dressed like that, often people would assume I was a male before I said something to them. I didn't get offended by it, but nevertheless, I know that's the case. So on the phone, though, I'm intrigued. If they don't, well, either on the phone or when somebody first comes into a place of business, like a storefront or whatever, they want to greet. So what should they say?
Great question. I see Jolene has that in the chat too. And I think that I can tell you what Lisa Kennedy, would do. And I think that this would be a great conversation for your team members, your management, whatever it's going to be. What is our culture going to be? So that it's the same all the time, and maybe it's going to be, maybe they just say, hello, my name is Lisa. I work for, Inclusion Ally. How can I help you? Rather than saying sir or ma'am, or, it sounds like a low voice, I use friend a lot. Some people don't like that. But again, I think that, and I'm not trying to skirt this question, Jolene, by any stretch for you, but I think that what's going to fit for your company. And same thing, I have had to change my terminology from calling people who are younger than me kids. Because my niece is 25 is like, please stop saying that. And I was like, duly noted. So if somebody calls and they have either a higher voice or a lower voice, it could go either way, right? You could just say, thank you for calling, someone will be right with you. So rather than, maybe you don't even have to put a binary term on that.
And what's going through my mind right now is every now and then when my husband and I both are in the hotel we're going to an event or even on vacation, if I call room service in the morning, the reservation says Mr. Harris. And I guess they don't pay attention that there might be two people in a room, although they shouldn't assume what the gender is of the other person. Now I think about it. But if I call room service, especially first thing in the morning, my voice is lower, then they will say, good morning, Mr. Harris, and how may I help you? And then I will say, it doesn't happen to be Mr. Harris, I'm Mrs. Harris. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. But I'm wondering and I'm not wanting to put you on a spot on a different way to say everything, but, I'm thinking they could say something, they could address Harris as a guest in the hotel somehow, but to somehow change that so they're not making the mistake of assuming what the gender is of the person. It just takes a little bit of thought.
It does. And I think that might be, especially, I'm thinking, 5-star resorts where, everything that's the way that it is. And I think that is going to be a journey. And I think that's going to, come down the pike when more people who don't use Mr. and Ms. or Mrs. or whatever go to those establishments. And so I'll give some grace in that. But if you have the power in your company, it's something to think about. It is something to think about.
So just as I knew, the time is flying by. We still have a couple more questions, or I think at least one more question. So I'm going to turn it to Jen, and then I want to give you an opportunity to do some sharing with some additional things. So Jen, another question?
Absolutely. And thankfully, a lot of the questions got answered that were coming in, just randomly got answered. So, but here's one specifically is, what questions should people avoid? If someone has come out to them and they're aware, what questions do you absolutely avoid?
Number one, if anyone who identifies as transgender comes out to you, never, ever, never, ever, never, ever, ever ask them about their junk. Write that down. No junk questions. No transition questions. Where are you at in your journey? Are you getting top surgery, bottom surgery? And here's another thing that I will say to my friends who identify as heterosexual, and you might be in the majority, please don't ask people about children status. Please don't ask people about marital status. So we assume, right, male, female, get married, have kids, white picket fence. Not everybody wants to have children. And not everyone wants to get married, or maybe this is their third marriage, so they don't want to talk about it. So I would bring those two together. So one question is never ask a trans person about their junk. However someone identifies to you, you go with that. Don't ask them, but I knew you as fill in the blank. Go with who they are now. And then don't ever ask anyone under the rainbow about their sexual activities, just like I don't want to know any of your hetero activities that happen anywhere.
Because my husband and I are child-free, I discovered many years ago that I had to add child-free by choice, because so many people who have kids don't understand why why a woman who could have kids chooses not to have kids. And so I just say child-free by choice, and I spoil my nieces and nephews to kind of close that. But people, they're what they're doing is pushing their values onto you. So I get that totally.
I got goosebumps, and I remember you saying that right at the beginning. So Jen, do you have one? You want me to jump to the chat about the you guys? What would you like to do, Jen?
You can go to the chat if you would like, either one, or I have a question as well, but whichever one.
Okay, so Angela says in the chat, people say you guys all the time. How do we approach that scenario? It's a pet peeve of mine. So when you hear, hey guys, I just nonchalantly say, or everyone.
And I'll add a quick one to that too. When I'm in a restaurant and I'm sitting with Chris Clark Epstein, and I used to kind of do the same thing. If it's either men and women, or I'm with all women, and the food server would come up and say, hi, you guys. And I'd say, I don't happen to see any guys here. I would say it like that. But for me personally, the more you call me a guy when you're a server, the lower your tip goes. Especially after I have, kind of said, we're not all guys. You're not picking it up. So that might be annoying to a lot of people, but it is a thing. It is something that some people are quite annoyed by. So Jen, quickly ask your question, and then we want to get to how people can be in touch with Lisa, etc.
Okay, this is more a business related question. How can I build a collaborative culture across teams and keep remote employees motivated and engaged in our nonprofit?
If you have people who are willing and able, the first thing you could do, if it's remote, put your pronouns in your Zoom window. That would be number one, okay, or whatever window it's going to be. Number two is to celebrate everyone with equity, not equally. All right, so think about, maybe people have children, maybe they don't have children. What time of day are we doing our meetings? Is it for the majority who don't have children? Okay. And then if you do have anyone who you think or has come out in the LGBT world, celebrate them. If you're going to ask about somebody's child, make sure you ask about my dog. And so that's important to me. And then ask me about my music. Music doesn't have a sex to it. So that's how you could include people, and then celebrate. We love games. The gays, we like dressing up. I'll speak for myself. So let's just have a little party and a little celebration and maybe a contest or two.
That's great. Thank you so much. So, of course, as always, we're running out of time, even though we have lots more that we would love to talk about. But I do want to tell our viewers a couple things. Number one, this is being recorded. So if you registered for the Zoom, you registered that way, then you will get the recording, and you have my permission to share it within your organizations. I set these up intentionally to be free, to pass the word on, to touch as many people as possible so that we can become more inclusive. So that's one thing. Lisa, I'd like you to tell us two things. One, a little bit more about your book. What was your intention in writing it, and what you hope people would get from it? And then how can they reach you directly? And we will be sending everyone a resource, a PDF of many resources for you as well. Lisa, take it away.
Thanks for asking. The reason I wrote the book is having that 12-year-old student come into my office, my second year as a middle school counselor, and say, Miss Kennecke, it's easier pretending to be a boy than it is to be gay in this town. And this was also a student of color, way minority, living with their grandparent. And I wasn't out as a 40-year-old white woman, cisgender woman of privilege. And I looked over at my desk and I saw my Trevor pen. This is the same pen that was on my desk. And I said, if I don't come out how is this kid going to stay alive? So I started a 2-year blog with resources for mainly school counselors, but then all educators, easy letters A through Z. And that's what this is. It just takes you through. I give you my stories. I interview people, lots of resources in here, letters A through Z, on how to become an inclusive ally. And the best way to get in touch with me is to go to lisakennecke.com, or I'm on LinkedIn under those names as well. And, you know, however I can help. I'm Lisa K, your everyday gay. Let's save lives together, my friends.
Lisa, wow, this has just been extraordinary. The number of times I get questions in this regard, and I sometimes know how to answer them, but many times not. This has just been a joy, first of all, to have you with us, and then a great learning. So I'm sure I'm going to be watching this video again, and I hope our viewers, and there are many people who signed up that knew they couldn't be here for this time period, but they will be watching it as well. If I get any feedback from folks that have watched that were here live, or for those who will watch it later, I will certainly pass it on to you. Thank you so much. Thank you for saving the lives that you are saving because of the work that you do.
And
thanks
thank you.
everybody for tuning in. We will have another one. We have not set the exact date. It's going to be about race and the myth of race. So we're going to be talking about race and the construct of race. So just keep following me, keep following us, and you'll hear about that very soon. Thanks, Jen, and thanks, Patrice, and thank you for not having the bad weather that we were supposed to have. It's coming up right now. Thanks so much.
Take care. Here.
Be safe and stay healthy, everyone. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. That was great.